Welcome back to another edition of the Big Ten Morning Minute. I'm your host, Michael Chen. It is January 8th, 2019, a big day yesterday for some football teams. We'll get right into it. Ohio State was very much active as Ryan Day is completing his staff, overhauling the defense as well. We'll give you real quick an update on what happened there. Ohio State former defensive coordinator Greg Schiano is out of his position as they brought in two separate coaches yesterday. They went up north and poached a Michigan coach, defensive line coach Greg Matheson. He is coming in as the co-defensive coordinator along with Jeff Hafley. He was the San Francisco 49ers defensive backs coach. Also did a little coaching with Day when he was at the 49ers as well, so that's where that relationship has begun. Defensive line coach Larry Johnson was elevated to the associate head coach, and linebackers coach Bill Davis is out, and again, Ryan Day is trying to poach another Michigan coach as he has a offer out to Al Davis to coach the linebackers. Davis for the Wolverines has not made a decision on whether or not he's going to defect to the rival team and end up coaching the Buckeyes and Ryan Day. So that remains to be seen. Also, Dwayne Haskins announced that he is obviously leaving school with Justin Fields going to Ohio State as a transfer from Georgia. I don't think Fields would have come if not for playing time. So I think the writing was on the wall for Haskins. He's obviously going to be either the top quarterback or one of the two top quarterbacks selected in this upcoming NFL draft, and wide receiver Ben Victor for the Buckeyes as well. Even though there wasn't much chatter about him leaving, he has decided to stay in school as well. There's a couple other neat things going on in the conference as some former Buckeyes and some freshman Buckeyes are going to be honored. As Wisconsin offensive tackle Joe Thomas, along with Michigan State former running back Lorenzo White, they're going to be inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame. So big time accolades for those two fantastic former Big Ten players. They've actually, Joe Thomas should end up in the NFL Hall of Fame as well. Lorenzo White not as much, but still very, very high accolades for those two players. As well, on the awards side, Taylor Martinez, KJ Hamler, wide receiver for Penn State. I'm sorry, Taylor Martinez, the quarterback for Nebraska, if you didn't know. The Maryland running back, Anthony McFarland, and Purdue wide receiver, Rondale Moore, all were named first-team All-American freshmen on the freshman team by the Football Writers Association in America. So, again, the Big Ten showing well there, getting four players named to the All-American freshman team. So a bright future ahead for those four players as well. There is a loss in the Big Ten for Iowa as defensive end Anthony Nelson has officially declared for the NFL draft. However, there's a nice addition for the Fighting Illini as they're going to add Oklahoma grad transfer A.D. Miller into their squad. The wide receiver comes in and obviously the high-powered offense of Oklahoma, so Illinois is getting a good one there. And the nice part is I think Lovie and his staff have done a fantastic job since post-signing day to get some players in. I mean, obviously Luke Ford coming in as well for transfer-wise along with Miller. So hats off to Lovie for realizing that they might not have gotten exactly who they wanted in the early signing period, but in the grad transfer signing period, even though there isn't one, they've done a really good job in adding players and potentially making their team much stronger. I was talking to Herb Lawrence yesterday night, and I believe that with what Illinois is doing, they're potentially looking at a return to a bowl game next year. I'm not saying a winning season, but 6-6, maybe 7-5 would be realistic for them. So I like what Lovie's doing, and I don't think anybody, especially Illini faithful, will be complaining much more about the fact that Lovie got a 2-year extension earlier in this season. So well done there by Lovie Smith and his staff. There was a There was a little bit of college football playoff news yesterday, along with the championship game. It looks like no expansions in the works, and I've kind of been a proponent of the 18 playoff due to the fact that you've got 5 power conferences, and one of them obviously is going to get left out with the 4 teams. But in all reality, I can't really see that working out because it's an extra game that these teams would have to play. There's more logistics involved. And that's why I think that the College Football Playoff Committee came out and said that there's not much in the works for expansion at the current moment. I do think they'll continue to look at it and look at the landscape of college football. But I don't argue with them at this point in time. If you look at the 2 teams that didn't make the playoff games, the championship game yesterday, those 2 teams, I mean, Oklahoma's good, but obviously they weren't great. They brought in the worst defense in all of the playoff teams ever. And, I mean, it's just, you look at Notre Dame, and, they got, handed by Clemson, but, that loss isn't that bad because obviously Clemson smoked Alabama last night. And while Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to digress for a second, but Trevor Lawrence, holy shit, this guy is absolutely amazing. He looked a little rattled early, as you can say, for a true freshman quarterback. But boy, once he settled down, he made NFL throws last night, and that was very, very impressive. So when this young man is eligible for the draft, I just can't see a way that he is not the number 1 overall pick. I mean, he's one hell of a talent, and enjoy him for the next 2 years, Clemson fans, because you're seeing just a fantastic player, and you might not see a player of his ilk come through in a long time again. So. But back to the expansion for the Big Ten, I think that it puts a little bit more pressure on Jim Delaney to get into his conference in. I mean, this is a couple years now in a row where the Big Ten champion has not had a chance. I don't think Ohio State deserved it this year due to the loss to Purdue. Last year, obviously, losing to Iowa, giving up 55 points. So, the Big Ten flag holder is Ohio State, and when the Buckeyes unfortunately lose in the middle of the season to a mid-rated conference opponent, that kind of shuts the door on the Big Ten getting into the college football playoffs. So you have to have clean wins, and your losses have to be against quality teams as well, and that's what we've learned in the last few years. So if the Big Ten wants to get their champion in there, they have to not suffer a terrible loss. So I think that's legit. I don't have gripes with that, in all honesty. I really don't. I don't think that there's any issues with that. So look to for the Big Ten to potentially not schedule as hard out-of-conference games in the future, because in all reality, it seems as if the college football playoff doesn't put much stock into that as well. Basketball, the polls came out yesterday. You got 4 teams for the Big Ten checking in the top 25. Not much else going on there in that world. Not much in the recruiting world, as there's a couple commitments. Nothing going on last night. But the 4 teams are Michigan coming in at number 2. You have Michigan State at 6, Ohio State at 16, and Indiana at 22. So a solid group of teams right there. A couple teams dropped out of the rankings after a few losses, but that's okay. I think the conference is in good hands basketball-wise. They're pretty deep and pretty strong, so I think that should be okay. That'll do it for me today. That's going to wrap it up. Another quick one on your Big Ten Morning Minutes. I appreciate you giving me a follow on Twitter. We could tweet about college football all day long. MFC 2123. Appreciate the listen. Have a great day, Big Ten fans.